someone that has not had a tough time developing or recruiting high school or transfer portal, particularly transfer portal the last couple of sessions. Nebraska softball and Rhonda Revelle on a tear to open this year, 8-2, including a season opening win over a highly ranked Tennessee. And boy, do they have a big weekend coming up. To break all of that down for us is our own from HuskerMax, Maren Angus-Coombs. And Maren, welcome to HuskerMax today.
I'm so excited.
So one, you can read all of Maren's stuff at HuskerMax, but two, you might be seeing more of her on television. So watch out for that. Not just on HuskerMax today. You'll be able to see more of Maren. That there's some exciting news there. But when you look, before we look at this weekend, Maren, you had the opening weekend. You had the win over Tennessee, a 3-2 start, and then we'll just call it what it was last weekend, a blitzkrieg with the bats and home runs from everybody and their mother, and run rules and national honors for a couple of players. What have you seen from this team over the first two weekends?
Honestly, I think this is probably what the team could have looked like if Jordy Bahl was healthy last year. And what we're seeing is is Jordy Bahl healthy and everyone feeding off of her energy.
And the Jordy Bahl effectiveness in the circle, I think it starts there because we know how dominant she can be coming off of a no-hitter. But yes, my gosh, when you look at what she's doing offensively, what this team, and I know last weekend was a big reason for that, but 24 home runs collectively as a team, getting solid contact. Not all of those went over the fence, by the way. We do know that. But I mean, offensively, I'm curious, is this what Rhonda Revelle had in mind when putting this team together and all the transfers and getting everybody in place?
Yeah, I think if we look back at the last couple of years, the offense has struggled a lot. They haven't been able to get the timely hits or score a lot of runs. And Rhonda was able to go into the transfer portal and not just add this offense, but she brought in a lot of players with ties to Nebraska. And I think that was really important for her too, is to bring in the players who, whether they're from here, they have family here, they played travel ball here, some type of connection to Nebraska, and to set themselves up for, I mean, look, when you look at the starting lineup, almost everyone's going to come back next year. So yeah, she's setting herself up for a couple years of success.
Oh yeah, we'll talk about 2026 down the road because there's already an exciting 2025 happening for this team. Obviously, there's Jordy and what she's doing in the circle, and both what she's doing at the plate. But you saw a school record from another player with Ava coming in and hitting a trio of home runs out of those billions that were hit last weekend. What have you seen from her over the course of this early part of the season?
Can we say Ava Kuszak is leading the country in home runs right now? Yeah. Like, she's leading the country. She has 8 home runs. Last year, her sophomore season at Wisconsin, she hit 9. So whatever.
So she's on pace to beat that. Good.
Yeah, she's on pace to beat all of her career highs in every category. Ava, I had a chance to talk to her in the fall, and she just felt like Nebraska was such a perfect fit for her. And, taking over for Billy Andrews, yes, those are big shoes to fill. However, she knows Billy. She grew up around Billy. Ava may not be from Nebraska, but she has family here, and she played for Nebraska Gold with Jordy. So she understands what's going on here in Nebraska, and it brings her a sense of pride to play for Nebraska and then to step into Billy's spot. And she's doing it very well. I mean, have you seen a difference between her and Billy so far?
Especially offensively, no. Maren, the schedule's interesting. So we all know what happened in the first weekend, and a couple of tough games to end that trip. But it almost seemed like last week was perfect for this team to. Kaleb and I talked about this as well, of Rhonda Revelle having a chance to, especially with all these newcomers, you don't know how everyone is still going to fit. There's a lot of college softball experience there, but not necessarily together. So when you're maybe stepping down a little bit in competition, just to maybe experiment with some certain lineup adjustments, maybe a bit of a rotation adjustment, and you're able to not only do that, but have the success that they did, especially offensively, but also defensively. That's the other thing that's, I think, lost in all this. We mentioned the Jordy Bahl no-hitter, but there was so many good moments defensively for a team that in those 2 losses in the first weekend was a little sloppy with the softball. How big do you think, going into what they start today in one of the most competitive college softball tournaments that you're going to see, other than maybe the Women's College World Series, how big do you think just that scheduling quirk from last weekend is going into this?
Yeah, I think it's a huge help because Rhonda had I think I talked about it after the first weekend. She used 5 lineups for 5 games. So the depth is insane. She had no idea what her starting lineup was going to look like outside of Ava hitting 1 and Jordy hitting 2. And through last weekend, we saw her start to use a more consistent lineup. You kind of saw the starters breaking apart from the rest of the team. And I think going into this weekend, it's going to be a little different than that first weekend because now they have an idea of who they are and who they want to be. So this first game against Baylor, we're not going to see Jordy pitch that game. There's no way because UCLA is on the back end of this 2-game set today. So that's my biggest question mark is who's the number 2. We haven't seen anyone really step up and own that role. I think we've seen Kylie McGee be thrust into this position where they want her to be the number 2, but I don't think she's quite recovered from her injury last season to really be in that role right out the gate. My money's going to be on Hannah Kamenzen and Emerson Cope to kind of like be a tag team number 2 right now. I think they're similar in a sense of that they don't get a lot of strikeouts, they get a lot of ground balls. So I think that's going to set up well for Baylor. And then you're going to have Jordy come in and throw against UCLA. So you're going to see 2 lineups today. And then you're just I'm just so excited. Yeah. I like the UCLA game specifically. I think the Big Ten is going to be between UCLA and Nebraska right now. Like these 2 teams have set themselves apart so early from the rest of the pack that I think we're getting a glimpse at what the Big Ten tournament might look like.
Maren, you bring up the lineup and shifting things around, but knowing that it's Ava Jordy at the top, 1-2. Nick, you'll appreciate this. I know. Let me preface this. Yes, baseball and softball are different, but at the end of the day, a lot of the things work the same in the way you can build a lineup. Typically, when you think about building a lineup, you want your leadoff hitter to get on base. Your 3-hole hitter is probably your best. Your 4-hole is your most powerful. That's the traditional way.
Yep.
A lot of what's happening in Major League Baseball says that's wrong.
Yeah, best hitters now leading off.
Yeah. So you want your first 2 hitters to be a couple of your best because so often that 3-hole hitter and even the 4-hole hitter come up with 2 outs and nobody on, so you're just wasting them. So typically now you want still number 1 to be your best on base, but they're one of your best hitters, and number 2 to be your best hitter. And that's the way Rhonda is building this lineup, like you said, Maren, and then figuring out all of the pieces after that, 3 through 10 the rest of the way.
Yeah, and it's interesting because in softball we have the ability to use the DP flex, which baseball doesn't have. And so with that DP flex, you've seen her be very creative with it, right? You've seen Emerson Cope is the DP, period. But depending on the matchup is who she's flexing for. The flex could be Nessa McMillan, it could be Abby Squire, it could be whoever's pitching besides Jordy. So you've seen her create this unique strategy with it. And so with that, you have the ability to create another leadoff position in the 9-hole for this team. And if you look at the stats, Ava's leading in RBIs. She's a leadoff hitter in leading the team in RBIs. So the bottom of the lineup has become like a secondary leadoff position in a way. And that is very scary for any opponent, right? Because you can't take a batter off because everyone has the ability to hit it out of the park, number 1, and number 2, get on base.
If there is the biggest takeaway from this week's competition, and I know a lot of us are circling that UCLA game, and I think you bring up a great point. That could be just an early rendition of what we'll see in the Big Ten championship game. But just given still the growth of this team, how much emphasis do you think there is on just this weekend out there in California of this team showing out? Let me preface it by saying, if they say split, or maybe they win just a couple of games or whatever, how much do you think people will dwell on that with this team, given the very similar to baseball, given the not only internal but external expectations on this team?
Yeah, when I look at this weekend, first I want them to come home with a winning record from this weekend. I think that would be considered a success. I'm not saying that coming home 500 or a losing record would be. I would say a losing record would be a bad weekend. 500 would be disappointing because I think this team has the ability to come home with a winning record. But I think you also have to look ahead in the sense that the Big Ten is not very strong as of right now. And you're going to want to get your quad one wins, against UCLA, against Baylor's iffy right now. They will be a quad one team by the end of the year. Utah, Duke. I mean, there's so many good teams in this, and you want those quad one wins, because when Nebraska gets to Big Ten play, there's not going to be a lot of that left.
Maren, if anyone does pony up for Flow softball, which is how you can watch the games,
it's expensive
this weekend. Find some family and friends to split that bill if you can. That's take on an extra student loan, bring out the extra mortgage. Thank you, Flow Sports, for all of that. Or you can listen to our buddy Nate Rohr on the Huskers Radio Network. If they do tune in for the games this week, and especially these first three, with Baylor, who, like you said, is iffy but receiving votes, UCLA number 4, Duke number 11, what can they expect to see in those first three matchups? 2 of those today, and then Duke early tomorrow.
Yeah, so with Baylor specifically, they're coming off of a really rough weekend. They Oklahoma threw a perfect game against them. So that's not very fun.
Nope.
But Baylor's an interesting team right now. They lost all their pitching. I mean, to the transfer portal, not even to graduation. They lost them to the transfer portal. So pitching has been a big question mark for Baylor so far. And I think you're going to see them try to figure that out early with who they're going to throw against Nebraska. And then with UCLA, UCLA lost a game over the weekend in dramatic fashion. Virginia, unranked Virginia, walked them off in the last game in Clearwater. And Taylor Tinsley, who is their ace, struggled in Clearwater. So I think you're going to see them try to put her back in the spotlight, try to get her groove back. But Caitlin Terry, she's a sophomore lefty. I think we might see KT against Nebraska. I just think she's throwing so well right now that we're going to see her in the circle over Taylor Tinsley. But they also have they have the top recruit in Addison Fisher. She's a freshman pitcher. So they've got the pitching too. I think it's set up to be a really good matchup. It's a toss up as to who they're going to throw, but I definitely say Jordy gets the ball against UCLA.
Well, Maren, I want to real quickly. I really want to ask you real quickly. I know sometimes we're not in sync. No, it's all good. Real quickly, I did want to ask, because I know we're kind of tracking this each week because of the injury, and more of, if anything, the overall, the wind of Jordy Bahl and just the overall condition. She looks like she is stronger than ever, but we know when you're out of competitive softball for over a year, rehabbing that knee injury, it can take a little bit of the wind. It could take a while for her to be fully conditioned. Are we getting closer, do you think, to her being where she needs to be?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I think we saw that first weekend. The stamina wasn't quite there. Last weekend, it's hard. They didn't play a single 7-inning game last weekend. So do we, did any of them have it? No, I think we're getting close. She documented her recovery on social media, and you could see, she hasn't really stopped. She's she's done whatever she could to be prepared for the season, to be ready to go when her name was called. And you're not going to see her back down. I know that.
Yeah.
So as many times as they hand her the ball, she's going to take it.
You can read all of Maren's stuff at HuskerMax.com. Looking forward to reading all of that throughout this weekend, Maren, and of course having you back on HuskerMax today throughout the season.
Thanks for having me. I can't wait to come back.
There you go, Maren Angus-Coombs, and like I said, she'll be on TV a little bit. You guys,
I thought you were going to break a story there for us.
No. Follow her on social media.
Okay.
She can break that. She can do all of that for you, Maren. Wonderful, and we're so happy to have her expertise on softball with HuskerMax.